Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to this week's episode of the Montpelier Happy Hour here on WVEW LP Brattleboro. I'm your host and producer of the show, Olga Peters, and this is where we talk about how everything in Montpelier shakes out for the rest of us. And today I want to welcome to the show Senator Wendy Harrison. She is one of two senators for Windham County, and I'm so glad you're here today, Wendy.
Thank you, Olga. I am also.
Well, and I'm looking forward to this. Hopefully, as the summer goes on, I'll get a chance to touch base with every Windham County senator and rep, and get to hear like what you folks worked on and what was important to you in this session. If folks aren't familiar with Wendy's work, she chairs the Senate Committee on Institutions and is also the clerk for the Senate Committee on Transportation. Senators serve on two committees where reps only serve on one. And yeah, we're here to talk about education and age-appropriate design for kids, which is about internet protection and how do we protect our kids online, which just, I'm not sure where in the show we'll start that conversation. So if you are someone with young people in the room, I hope you pay attention, but I also hope you know it's not an easy conversation to have because there are predators out there. So this is a little bit of your trigger warning if you do have little ones in the room when we are talking. But now, Wendy, with that preamble out of the way, let's dive into probably the bill that got the most attention this session, which was the Education Reform Bill H454, which has passed the Senate and the House and is waiting with the governor. I checked his website this morning and I didn't see he had taken action. I'm really curious, Wendy, we've had Emily on the show who is so deep into the weeds on this bill, and you're someone who kind of came from the outside in with it. So I would really love to hear just your thoughts on the bill and why you voted for it.
Okay, thank you. So you're right. This bill is the one that probably got the most attention from the outside, and it also probably received the most attention within the State House. And yes, I do serve. I'm the chair of the Institutions Committee, and that committee does the capital budget along with IT, which is where we'll talk about kids code a little bit later, and transportation. And so those were my focus this session, but it was impossible to not understand that the education system was going to be a focus for all of us. The governor made it one of his priorities. You probably know that the Democrats lost a lot of seats in the last election. And I see that as mostly a function of the taxes increasing that year, as well as some retirements in the Senate. The governor believes that it was the taxes and education. There were other reasons to look at education, and whatever folks think about the necessity of this work, it was going to happen. Education changes were going to happen this year. So the governor had a presentation earlier in the session, and they recommended 5 districts for the entire state, which was not realistic in my opinion, and some other aspects. And so because it was such a detail-oriented and impactful bill that was being worked on by others, I kept background knowledge of it, but I could not get into the details, and it wouldn't have made sense for me to get into the details until things were starting to gel. And it became very controversial between the House and the Senate. Yeah. And as you know, there's a committee of conference, and Emily was on that committee, so she can let you know more about that. And that committee of conference happened last week, literally. They ended on Friday. And
Friday the
then
16th.
Friday the 16th. And then we came back on Monday to actually take action on the bill. So we had very little time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did the dates wrong. So that I think was the 13th. You
So
guys
this,
came
oh
back
yeah,
on the 16th.
exactly. Friday the 13th was when they completed, and the 16th was the Monday when we came. When we is the legislature, both the House and the Senate, and it came to the Senate first, and it was a very difficult decision. I had actually expected to vote no, and let me step back just for a second. The way I evaluated this bill and similar bills are just based on my personal values. I value public education immensely. I'm a product of public schools. I sent my kids to public schools. A good quality public education is fundamental to democracy, and it's fundamental to our kids' futures. And Vermont has an excellent public school system. So I felt that we should not at least not hurt the system. That was a baseline. Um, the more I learned about the bill, many of the things that I had been concerned about were either made better or taken out of the bill. So, for example, public money going to private schools. I'm sure you're familiar with the independent schools. We currently allow 52 schools, private schools, to receive public funding. Effective July 1, there will be only 19 schools that will meet the criteria. The bill reduces the number of tuitioning, tuition, which is the word that we use for subsidizing or paying
Mm-hmm.
for private schools. So it reduces that. It eliminates out of state tuition, which is really important. I was very surprised when I learned that Vermont was paying for tuition for folks to go to European schools, for example. There weren't that many, but that shouldn't be allowed.
Mm.
And what has been the case is that these independent schools can charge a different amount, a higher amount than the public schools use.
Mm. Mm.
And that's just not fair. And
Mm-hmm.
so the bill says that the independent schools have to accept the same amount of funding that the public schools do. So I think those are real advantages, and those are some of the only things that actually take effect now.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that takes effect this summer is that there will be a redistricting task force, and that group will come up with 3 different maps of the state. And instead of 5 districts, the goal is to have between 10 and 20 districts, and supervisory unions can be included in those districts, and that's really important because it gives more flexibility and provides for more local control, which is
Mm-hmm.
also a value I have. My background is in local government, and I firmly believe that if you can make a decision at the local level, that's the best place to make it.
Mm.
Because you can serve your people better. So that task force will come up with a physical plan, so a map, and the legislature will have to approve that before we go further. The other thing that is immediately in effect is that there will be a category in the tax code for second homes.
Okay.
And that's important because we've been talking about that for a while, and I hear a lot from my constituents about taxing second homes because they are an issue. We have a housing shortage, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem. So that's a good thing, and I support that.
Okay. Well, yes, and we live in a county with a lot of second homes. Um,
Right. Right.
That will be interesting. Um, I don't know if you know this, Wendy, and it's fine because I can, of course, ask Emily. But the category for second homes, as if I understand it correctly, under our current ed system, second homes are part of the non-homestead rate, and they're kind of lumped in with rental properties and commercial properties as well. Does this mean it's going to have a category all on itself where just like second homes and vacation homes just are taxed on their own, or are they still lumped in with commercial properties and that type of
Yeah,
thing?
they're separated from commercial properties.
Okay.
And definitely double check with Emily, but they're a um, they're still a residential category, but they're not a used all year
Hmm.
category. And we did something similar in one of the housing bills last session, where if you where we increased the transfer tax
Oh yeah.
for homes that wouldn't be occupied year round. So in that case, we said that there's a benefit to having a year round rental because
Hmm.
that's typically someone who lives here, obviously, right? Versus short-term rentals or no rental at all. So if you could submit a landlord certificate for a year's rental, then you could pay the lower amount. So that's a little bit different, but it's the same goal, which is to just get, we need revenue to handle the housing, and we don't want to encourage second homes that are not used,
Hmm.
because I mean something I've noticed is that second homes still need to be maintained.
Hmm.
So we have limited folks, we have limited plumbers, limited electricians, all of those folks that you need just to maintain a house. So they're taking away hours that regular residents need
Hmm.
from those folks.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Wendy. I think we had been before we kind of dove into the some of the differences, um, talking about how you came to the bill and what brought you to vote for it. Brought you to vote for it. I think you know what
Yeah,
I mean.
that's yeah, yeah. No, it's that I agree with what the bill did and will do more as far as limiting and reducing independent schools' use of public money.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, independent schools are fine to be on their own and uh, you know be self-sufficient financially, but it's the public money part of them that that's what I'm opposed to. Um, and there's also what I think will be helpful in the bill is the state is proposing to start funding construction. We stopped funding construction actually in the institutions committee a couple decades ago. We stopped funding local school construction,
Hmm.
and so it'll be a different committee or in the proposal, but there will be a method for the state to help towns and districts fund school
Okay.
construction, because a lot of many of our issues now have to do with the buildings themselves, not just the structure.
Yeah, many of them were built at the same time, and now they're kind of having the same aging issues at the same time.
Right, and PFAS, and we have, yeah, or
Yep.
yeah, so many chemicals now are a problem too, in many ways.
Yeah, start at the top of the list. Just keep working away down.
Yep, yep.
um, Now, as I understand it, a number of your Democratic colleagues in the state, sorry, in the Senate, did not vote for this bill. Um, I'm curious, did that give you pause or?
Oh, well, just the whole we had a couple of conversations uh and yeah, I mean I share many of their concerns. The process was very rushed and
Mm.
very focused on the independent schools, and it seemed as if the independent schools were going to get more.
Hmm.
So I think that was a perception, because, and again, you could talk to Emily about that. But I do have concerns about process because process matters, especially in government. It's important not just what we produce, but that we do it in a way that the residents and the citizens can understand what we're doing and see why we do things.
Hmm.
And it was just very, very rushed at the end, and that was not good. Um, I also really care about local control,
Hmm.
and so it's going to be challenging to find a way to keep local control while having funding come from the state. Um,
Hmm.
I think if we're really careful, we can make both things work because school boards shouldn't just be seen as a financial mechanism for schools. They should also be and they are a policy body, right? So
Mm.
how
Yeah.
kids are how are things going in the school? How does it work in the local context?
Hmm.
So it's just really important to have school districts be accountable um, to their communities.
Yeah.
And like community schools are just a great option where you have other um, things other than the strict school within the building. You can have a senior center, you could have medical,
Hmm.
you could have dental, and that's just a great model. And we've had a couple of those in the state, but we definitely need to look at that more.
Yeah, that model intrigues me too, especially for some of our smaller communities where
Yes,
they need, like, you really need to put thought into how do we create those third spaces, those community spaces. And I can see how that would be a natural place to expand the local school, to expand gathering and expand services and expand connecting with different parts of the community, not just parents with school children.
right, right. And it'll just be it makes a lot of sense when people don't have transportation. That's something I'm really involved in is transportation.
Mm.
And there are a lot of families who can afford just one car. And when you have
Yeah.
one car in a family, you need to have transit. Hopefully, I work a lot on transit. We can maybe do a little session on that sometime.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but having co-locating services is helpful to the parents, and it also keeps people who don't have kids or had kids and their kids grew up. It keeps them involved in the schools too, because one of the challenges in schools, especially with school board meetings, is many times it's just the parents and the teachers going to the meetings, but schools really impact everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can get people who aren't actively engaged because of their family or their job, to be involved in the schools, that's much better.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Um, what else do you think? This education bill has received a lot of press and a lot of conversations. But for you, do you feel there were any parts that maybe weren't understood as well, or maybe weren't talked about as much as you think they should have been or could have been?
Sure. Well, something that I received a lot of comments on, and I think this is a symptom of the how it was rushed, because in earlier versions of the bill, school closures were likely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or mandated closures.
Mm,
But in the last iteration of the bill, they're much less likely.
mm,
There are guardrails so that if on class size, like actually, I really don't like minimum class sizes that,
mm,
and that's still in the bill. The minimums are higher, and there's an appeal process if a school doesn't abide by those minimums for at least 3 years. I still don't like that part of it. I really want small. If a small school with small classes is doing a good job, it ought to be able to continue.
mhm.
That's my feeling.
Well,
But we
minimums.
have time to talk about that too, because those aspects of the bill wouldn't go into effect until we have more votes.
Okay. Yeah, minimums I always found where I understand the spirit behind them, but like I think back to when I was going through elementary school, and each year was a little different depending on how many kids had been born or how many people moved to the area. And I don't know, I remember my school kind of doing set up so that it could sort of flex and move, and rearrange classrooms based on the
Right,
size of that cohort of that
right.
year.
And we have wonderful small schools, and people move to Vermont for the schools. I mean, we have since starting in COVID and continuing, we have had people move here for the schools.
Mhm.
And I know of folks, even without COVID, sorry about that, who grew up here, went elsewhere, but when they had children, they wanted to come back
Mhm.
because our schools are effective and good. I mean, just
Mhm.
nice places to be. So,
Yeah. Um, we have just about 5 minutes before we need to hear from some underwriters, and this might be too big a question for 5 minutes, but I am intrigued. I always feel with our education system that sometimes we are fighting ourselves when the you know we have the state level and then local control, and sometimes I feel like the needs of both those systems can butt heads, not because they're inherently controversial. They just have different needs and they function slightly differently. So for you, how do you see that balance between local control and state resources, um, and like state level operations? Does that make sense?
oh yeah, no, and that is a big conversation. Um, so to me, what I see in the current system is that the the towns or the districts that are often towns um, actually, they produce a budget. That budget goes up to the state. The state puts all of the budgets together, comes up with a number. That number goes down to everyone. So there isn't a lot of thought or maybe even opportunity for adjustments or just making sure it's logical, and
Mm,
that seems to be the reason for going to the formula, the foundation formula, where there would be an amount per student, and then that amount would have weight similar to what we recently did a couple of years ago when we added in weights,
mhm.
understanding that some kids need more resources
Yeah.
to thrive, and uh, and so the weights are critical, and that's something that was talked about a fair amount in the conference committee and in all of the discussions. So I think having the weights be based on Vermont studies, which is the understanding that I have, is that they are based on they're empirical. They're based on reality, rather than just theory. Um, so it seems like it could be a very effective system. I am grateful that we're looking at it in steps so that we can get information back. One thing I think we really need is information from the schools themselves on how things are going, and a way to aggregate that information in a way that's useful to decision makers. And AOE has a big job to do, and so they need to be up to the job. That's a concern I have, is that they're not either resourced or organized or something. But again, that's where I don't know the specifics, but I do know that their functionality is critical.
You're not the first one on the show to say that they do feel AOE really needs to be involved, and they have concerns on, again, whether they're resourced. They don't necessarily know the cause, but they do feel that AOE needs to be involved, and whether they have the resources they need to do it.
And that's the governor's bailiwick. So that's the administration needs to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then if we do the districts right, and I think we should align them with county boundaries, not necessarily be just a county, but align them with the county boundaries. So that because the counties were made based on geography and a certain amount of distance, and there already are connections of the communities because they're in a county. So that could be a good in between the state and the individual districts or individual schools. Because when I say district, that could be the whole, a large district that has no districts under it, or it could be a supervisory district or a supervisory union. And there's all sorts of ways it can happen. But I think at some level, it should overlap with the counties.
Gotcha.
So that we could use those structures that already exist. I think to me, it always makes sense to use existing structures if you can, rather than create something completely new.
Right. So just to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, like, let's say Windham County and Windsor County and Bennington County became a district, you'd want to see that district include all three of those counties, and not like cut Windham in half or cut Bennington in half or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, in the governor's proposal, those 5 districts, one of them looked like Windham and Windsor combined, but I think that's too big. And so instead of 5, we'll have between 10 and 20.
Yeah.
So and we have 14 counties. So that really is an opportunity to make it work by county. Because I think those 3 would be much too big.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, I know we have to get to a break, but just like and you just got to look at geography, because if you look at Windham and Bennington counties, we don't do as much with Bennington. We do some. We do economic development with them, and that works very well. But if you think about just transportation networks, I mean, that's how we go places, obviously, is transportation. And the mountains in between make it much easier to go north and south instead of east and west in our part of the state, because obviously there's a really nice mountain range that we love in the middle.
But that mountain range could have like 15 feet of snow and sleet on the road when it's like 40 degrees in Bennington or Brattleboro.
Right. So especially for kids, when you think about transporting kids, and actually, it's one other thing in the language, in the newer language, is that there is a focus on local elementary schools and regional high schools.
Okay.
So that's explicitly said in the new language, and I think that's definitely a benefit, because local schools are what's most important for younger children.
Mm-hmm. Well, Senator Wendy Harrison, thank you. We're going to hear from some underwriters right here on WVEW, LP Brattleboro. So stay tuned. The Montpelier Happy Hour will be right back. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the second half of the Montpelier Happy Hour here on WVEW, LP Brattleboro. If you're just joining us, I'm Olga Peters, and I am speaking with Senator Wendy Harrison from Windham County, and we were talking about education in the first half of the show. And now we're switching gears a little bit. We're still focused on kids and students, but we'll be talking about Act 63, which its official name is Age Appropriate Design Code. Its unofficial name is Kids Code, and it will be dealing with the internet and young people's access to the internet, and also the dangers that can face many young people on the internet. So if you are a parent or a caregiver with young children, I hope you listen, but be warned, there are parts of this conversation that at times can be difficult. So if you have little ones in the room, you might just want to keep that in mind. A quick thank you to BCTV for taking the video version of our show, sharing it with media centers across the state. And as we always like to remind listeners, the views and opinions of everyone on the Montpelier Happy Hour are those of the host and the guests, and no one else. We are quite capable of having our own opinions and owning them.
And sharing them.
Whether anyone wants to listen or not, but right now we got the microphone.
Right.
So thank you, Wendy, for being here and talking about Act 63, because I admit it went over my head because so much focus went on to housing and the education reform bills, I believe. So give us a little roundup about this bill and why it was something that was so important to you.
Okay, happy to. And let me just step back a little bit. In the last session, so a year and a half ago, we talked about this bill then too.
Okay.
Kids Code is the informal name, as you said, and we also worked on a general data privacy bill.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these bills are intended to stop and to regulate the internet companies from doing what they know is harmful to specifically to children in Kids Code, but to all of us in the data privacy regulations. And the reason these are necessary is that our country has not been able to enact meaningful federal legislation, because what would be best and the companies themselves agree, would be if we had one system for everyone, and we didn't need to go state by state. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the European Union has regulations on data privacy and all kinds of data related functions. And when those went into effect, I thought, gosh, then it'll be easier for the companies to use the European methods in America. But guess what? I was completely wrong. And it turns out that the American market is so valuable that they change their methods, their algorithms, and you'll see sometimes when you go onto a site, you'll see if you're a resident of California, you can do these things. So it's easier, or I should say it's more profitable for them. And just another thing that we worked on last year was changes to the online betting. Mm-hmm. And what we found in the online betting conversations is that the companies know within feet, like less than 10 feet, where your phone physically is. And so they can have different programs for New Hampshire than for Vermont, and Vermont versus Massachusetts. And and it's because they know exactly where we are.
Mm-hmm.
They know where our phones are, so they know where we are.
Right.
And so there's some folks are saying, oh, businesses can't can't deal with this. Um, the local businesses, like a shoe store, doesn't really have agency, but the internet companies can do really whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of capacity there. So with
Right.
that as the background, those bills did not make it through the process in the last session. When I was appointed to the uh, institutions committee, we enlarged the uh, uh, scope of that committee, and there had not been a place for IT specifically.
Mm.
So we put IT in that committee um, because Kids Code is a consumer protection bill in some ways. We shared jurisdiction, so we worked. So both committees worked on that. So that's a long intro. Um, General data privacy is still in play in this year's or in this biennium.
Mm-hmm.
It's not finished yet, but I'm confident that it will be finished in the second year of the biennium.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to get Kids Code through, and I'm just so grateful that we were able to. And I appreciate that you did a warning, and I actually did a warning on the floor of the Senate a couple of
Mm.
times because I was pretty confident there weren't that many children listening, but just for kids who care about children, the stories are horrific, and the stories got worse from last biennium to this biennium. Last biennium, we heard about kids not being able to sleep, um, uh, not being able to keep up with their schoolwork, and just their personalities changing, becoming addicted to the internet, or to specific sites. And these sites know how to addict children. This year, we heard horrific stories about kids being raped, and the rape was possible because in this case it was Snapchat, and Snapchat is known to be a way that predators can contact young girls, generally middle school girls, directly.
Mm-hmm.
And
They don't have the filters in between to like make sure someone who's 24 can't necessarily find someone who's like 12.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what the person who's 24 will do is they'll friend request the young girl and pretend to be a young boy. And that's exactly what happened to a girl in Vermont. And the incident was 10 years ago. The person was convicted of rape and is, I believe, still in the incarcerated. But she and her friend are now ready to talk about it. And um, you can tell that the girls are being targeted because they say that when they get to be older, like 17, 18, they're basically aging out of the preferred demographic, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
get those emails anymore. So it's really it's just sad, and the companies know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked someone who's not very knowledgeable in this, do they get paid? Do like what's the incentive to the company? Do they get it like a payment from the pedophile? I mean, of course they, you
Right, but like
can't do that.
why wouldn't they put the filters in place?
Right. Because they can. It's not, all they get is um an increase in the eyeballs on their ads. And so their ads are more valuable because they have more people looking at those ads, and it's a really minimal amount of money per kid that's harmed, which is, I mean, obviously you don't want them to do it for any amount of money, but it's particularly egregious that they're doing this, and they focus on American children because they're the ones who are most who are on the internet the most. I mean, they have phones, and their families typically have a lot more money than folks in other
Mhm.
countries. So American kids are targeted, and for the boys, what is typical, a typical story is that Instagram is the one who is involved there, where they can predators can target athletes, high school athletes, who are very conscious of their performance and their bodies, and many of them are really hope to get into a college program or a professional sport. So the predators can pretend to be someone in sports, or they can pretend to be a classmate of the person, and they get they get the person to send them photos showing their body, and then they'll say, "Oh, I'm not, who you thought I was, and if you don't do X, Y, then um, I'm going to send these photos to your mom," because on Instagram, you once you're connected to the person, you know all of their connections.
Mhm.
So it's a pattern, and it happens again and again, and so those sometimes end up in suicides. Um, so it's it, it's just unbelievable,
Mhm.
and so we have to do something, and we have done something, and I'm really proud of Vermont for passing this kids code bill,
Mhm.
because it focuses on the algorithms and the methods of both extortion and addiction, and it does not focus on the content, because there have been similar state bills like this that have
Right.
been overturned by the courts as First Amendment with issues, because children are legally allowed they have the same rights
Same First
to
Amendment rights as anybody.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But we were able to prove that there are, other ways that you can damage kids and hurt kids. And so those other ways, which is the algorithms primarily, and the settings, the privacy settings, and not doing things like push notifications in the middle of the night, because one of the ways that they addict them is they'll do push notifications between all night, and that's one of the reasons they don't sleep. So
Mm.
the bill says you can't do them between midnight and 6 a.m., which is, it'll be very easy for the companies to comply
Mhm.
with that, and it'll make a difference.
So,
um
Wendy, I'd love to hear some of the details of this bill, but before we do, you and I had been talking before the show, and you actually pulled out a quote by one of the tech company employees, and I can't remember which one it was, but I thought it really summed up why this bill was necessary. Would you mind pulling that quote out?
sure.
And
No, happy to.
while
I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, and while you're looking for it, I will just let folks know. I will put in the show notes a link in the show notes of this episode, um, a press release from the FBI, and also a press release from the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, both warning of some of the things that are happening online to young people and some of the warning signs to look for. So I will just put that there in case any caregivers and parents will find that helpful.
That's great. And just in case people don't watch the end of this, the main thing is to keep your kid, if your child is going to look at the internet, have them in a place that's not private.
Mm.
Because they're actually in more danger when they're in their room with the door shut on the computer than they are outside. So, yes, the quote that you have, it was a TikTok employee. And TikTok is proud actually that they can hook an average user in 35 minutes, which is 260 videos. That's a lot of videos in that amount. But
Mm-hmm.
the quote we talked about, this is from it's from a court hearing. So and it was what a TikTok employee wrote to his supervisors. So what he said was, the reason kids watch TikTok is because the he means algorithm, is really good. But I think we need to be cognizant of what it might mean for other opportunities. And when I say other opportunities, I literally mean sleep and eating and moving around the room and looking at somebody in the eyes.
In other words, they could fill those moments with TikTok videos instead.
Yes, well, and he's saying the kids, they're not sleeping, and they learn to not be able to interact
Mm-hmm.
with not just with adults but with other kids. And they're really being harmed. So this bill can do something, and now it's Act 63.
Mm-hmm.
It will make a difference. The one change that was made in the House was that they added a 2-year period for the Attorney General to work on the rules.
Okay.
So it won't go into effect immediately. But so in the meantime, Vermont parents, you need to you
Mm-hmm.
need to be there with your kids. And I can send you some more resources if you like, because there are a lot
Mm-hmm.
of groups who are working on this, and they're really happy to help.
And what are some other so the AG's office will work on some of the rules. So I understand there are some things that aren't in stone yet. Um, but what are we looking to require the internet companies or the tech companies to have to put different filters in place, put up different warnings? How are we asking them to take care of kids?
Sure. Sure. I'll give you some specific examples and then a general one.
Perfect.
So, the default privacy settings for kids need to be set to the highest level of privacy. And that includes preventing a child's social media account from being publicly visible. Honestly, that's something I would like for adults too, because they're set obviously not at the highest level, and it can be really difficult to go in and change those settings
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want you to change the settings.
Right.
So that's really important to have the default settings at the highest level of privacy. And this would have prevented the Snapchat incident from having occurred. And then another section prevents businesses from collecting or sharing the personal data of a child for any reason besides providing the service requested by the child. So that's important because we
Mm-hmm.
don't, again, we want kids to have a low profile. And I mentioned already the push notifications between midnight and 6 a.m. And another very specific one is that they can't use algorithms such as infinite scroll,
Mm-hmm.
which the person who invented the infinite scroll, which is where you keep looking on Facebook or anything and it never ends. So before the infinite scroll, it would end, and so then you would actually look up and
Mm-hmm.
into the world, and now you don't. You're addicted, and so the person who invented that regrets
Mm-hmm.
that invention. And then something that is in the bill, it says sets the minimum duty of care to minors that's required. And the way they define that, it says covered businesses are required to design their online services in a way that does not cause emotional distress or compulsive use.
Hmm.
And it's important to have something that's that general because they will find ways, like infinite scroll that we don't know yet
Right.
to addict kids. And so that's just a general statement that you need to not implement methods that will hurt children.
Hmm.
And so we heard from an attorney that the attorney for the tech company who was being sued noted that what they were doing wasn't specifically in the law. So what are they supposed to do? We didn't know we weren't supposed to harm kids. Well, now you
Well,
know.
it is sort of one of the main jobs of an adult is to
Yeah,
like not harm children.
I know it's a real shame that we have to even do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it said something.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting for me as someone who works in media and deals with information. The First Amendment is extremely important to me,
Sure.
and I do feel it's one of our strongest and best things we got going for the U.S. And it does, as much as I want to protect everyone's First Amendment rights. Boy, the companies tend to push them a lot, like and see how far they can get. And so while I want to protect the First Amendment, what I want to remind folks of is there's a lot of places where we have full access to information, like libraries, like newspapers, um, and where we might come across information that makes us uncomfortable or we don't like or whatever. But what we forget is that those places actually have guardrails built into them that the internet doesn't, that a lot of this social media does not have. Like I compare it to movies versus television. So, back in the day, I'm a Gen Xer, if you went out to the movies, there were a lot of guardrails in place to which movie you went to see. Like you looked at the poster and you looked at the reviews and you looked at the rating. And then you actually decided to like leave your house and go watch a movie. And so you did a lot of filtering before you even got to that movie. Whereas like if you look at TV, one of the things that makes me crazy, I wish TV companies were a little more careful with this, is you'll be watching like a murder mystery and someone's like a woman has been horribly raped. And then it will cut to like a maxi pad commercial
Mm.
with like a happy woman and like that cognitive dissonance makes me just drives me nuts. But there's kind of like fewer guardrails there to
Right.
what we're consuming. And I know that's kind of an outdated example, but I share it to say even though we have freedom of speech, it doesn't mean just because we have media access, we still need media literacy. And we need
Yeah.
literacy around information. And it just brings me back to this is what I'm thinking about when we talk about this bill and the need for it. If my ramblings now make sense.
No, no, it totally makes sense. Well, also in the movie example, if you were a kid, you didn't get to see all the movies,
Right.
and you could try to sneak in, but I think that's a relevant comparison. And then with the social media, a big part of it is the anonymity.
Mm,
So when you're hiding who you are, that's lying, right?
yeah.
And because we give away, we don't, our country doesn't seem to value privacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of people I talk to who say, well, they're going to know everything anyway, but they're really not. And we do have privacy laws. We have HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
We have like your bank. People really don't like the idea of their tax return being public, right? I mean, tax returns are private.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important to us to not let people know how much money we have or don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our kids are as valuable as our money. And if we could protect kids as well as we protect our money, that's a standard, right? Like you can't steal, and they the people who people get more and more clever, so uh, we the regulations have to get stronger and be more flexible, because now it's not just like someone's hacked my computer. That's bad. Someone's caused my kid to kill themselves. That's not even. There's no words for that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what's happening, and
Yeah.
and people need to know. And I think it's a combination of the internet doesn't put that's it's not to the benefit of the media to put that online, right? Because they
Mm-hmm.
want you to stay online. They don't want you to be afraid to go online. Um, but so one thing that we found out in this session, or that I found out, was the videos that they send to kids of horrible uh, uh, um, thing, like animals being abused, people actually dying. This is where you need
Yeah,
uh,
the trigger warning. It
right.
it
But
gets
it's a
pretty
real
horrible.
thing, and I didn't know that this was happening. This attorney who was working with the two girls who were raped, or the girl who was raped and her friend, she only found out about this when she was looking at a kid's phone,
Mm-hmm.
because the internet companies don't send those videos to adults. They started, maybe by mistake, like 3 months ago. There was, I don't know if you saw, there were a few articles about people getting videos of other people, like decapitations and just horrible, horrible stuff. And the company stopped sending those. It was X and someone else stopped sending those videos within days
Mm-hmm.
of people being upset about it. They've been sending those for years to kids. I talked to a young woman about 25 about it, and she said when she was a middle school kid, she was getting those videos. And I said, "Oh, did you talk to your parents?" She said, "Oh, no, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't at that age." So for 10 years, they've been sending those to kids, and adults didn't even know that they existed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's just horrible.
And I just want to add some clarity, if you don't mind, Wendy. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat are not the companies that are actually sending the videos. It's um, someone, an actual person, a predator, sending the video to a kid. However, it's the internet company that has the power to put filters in place um, to kind of break that chain of
Yes.
communication.
And that is important to say. Um, but because they do have that power and they have chosen not to use it, and because certain internet companies are known for certain types of abuse,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to name them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Um, I will put also in the show notes a link to the state website where Act 63 is posted. So if
Uh-huh.
anyone wants to read it in depth, unfortunately, we are out of time. But this is a conversation that could go on and
Right.
on and on. Um,
Do we have time to talk about the phone ban,
yeah,
cell phone
like
ban?
2 minutes.
Okay, and I can do it in 1 minute.
Cool.
Proposed this year is and it was adopted by the Senate and the House and should be signed by the governor, is a ban on cell phones in schools in Vermont. And the schools that have already done this voluntarily have had a great result, better than they expected. Teachers who plan to retire are staying, because they're saying that the kids are happier. They're happier. They're getting along better with their peers. They're paying attention in class, and they're enjoying school much better. So, and that will happen in 2026.
Okay. 2026, no more cell phones in the schools.
It'll be a good thing.
Okay. Well, thank you for
Thank you.
reminding us of that bill as well. And on that note, Wendy, if anyone wants to learn more about the work you're doing or reach out to you, how can they do that?
My legislative website or email is wharrison at Vermont dot. Oh gosh, can I do it again?
.ledge.
Wait, wharrison at ledge.state.vt.us.
And that's also listed on your legislative webpage
Yes.
on the Vermont state, vermont.gov.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Senator Harrison. As always, the Montpelier Happy Hour is on WVEW LP Brattleboro every Friday at 2. It is rebroadcasted on Wednesday mornings. And thank you to BCTV for the video version. And wherever you find your podcasts, we are around. I have to quickly note, big thanks to John Walters from the Vermont Political Observer for pointing out a technical glitch. I thought a lot of our back episodes were uploading properly. They were not. This has happened before. I thought I had fixed it. So I'm so sorry, folks. If you subscribe to our podcast, you'll be seeing some back episodes coming up as I reload them, and I apologize for that. Okay, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Olga.